Welcome back to Minute JavaScript, where I try and cover topics quickly and concisely. Today I'll be covering the arrays reduce method. Before I begin, I'd like to preface this by saying you should already have a mastery of the arrays for each method. If you're not yet familiar with for each, I have a link in the description. I encourage you to watch that first. So I'm going to start with the for each. The first argument in the callback is going to be the number, and I'm just going to console log that out just to make sure that my loop is working correctly. Now, if I wanted to use this for each to do something like add up all the numbers, I'm going to have to create an external state, and I'll just call it total. And inside this callback here, all I would have to do is say total equals total plus number. And now the total's 55, which is the sum of all the numbers. So one of the things that's a little bit messy about this is this function here has to reach outside and modify total every time. And this is where reduce comes in. Reduce is just like a for each that also includes state. So what I have to do is change for each to reduce. This 0 up here is the initial value. I'm just going to go ahead and copy that and pass it into reduce as an argument. I can now get rid of the total. Now I no longer have access to this external state here, but the reduces callback method passes that in. So I'm just going to include the state before the item. And if I want to, I can even call it total. And reduce expects the new total to be returned. Now I can set it to a value, and now my total is still 55. And I was able to do away with this external state that kept getting modified on every callback. One last thing I like to do is in the majority of my callbacks, I refactor these into an external method. And this just gives me greater reusability. I can now take this add function and move it into another file that can be imported by other parts of my application. And just for fun, I'm going to write this as an arrow expression. A couple of things to remember is that reduce takes two arguments. It first takes the callback, and then it takes an initial value. When creating your reducer callback, remember that the state is passed in first and the item is passed in second. You also have access to index as well as the original source array. But I'm not using these in this example. Now let's jump to the next example. So what I'd like to do is take this mixed array and group these animals by their type. So what I want to do is start with a simple group by function that takes a key. The reason why I'm passing in this key is so the caller of group by can specify what key they want to use to do the grouping. And this function is then going to return a reducer that is capable of grouping by that key. So I'm going to return a function. Because it's our reducer, it starts with a state and has an item. And right now I'm just going to return the state, which means the reducer is going to do nothing. So now I'm going to call animals.reduce. I'm going to pass in my group by, give it a key which is type, and also my initial state, which is going to be an object. So now I'm going to go up into my reducer and just look and see what the items are. It's just what we expected, each item in the array. And state is just going to be the initial object that I passed in at the beginning. What I'm going to do first is find the group. And that's just going to be the key off the item. I can see here my group is cat, dog, dog, dog. So now we just have to add the group to the state. And now I can see when I hover over state that it changes each time. The first time it comes in, it's my empty object, then cat is added, then dog is added. Now the last piece of this is to just add that item into the array. So I'm going to take the group here, and I'm just going to call push on it with the item. This doesn't format too well, so I'm just going to go ahead and output this to the console. Now this is formatted a little bit better. You can see I have my cats group, which has one cat, as well as the dogs group that contains all the dogs. And that's going to wrap up this episode of Minute JavaScript. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. Of course, like and subscribe, share with your friends and coworkers, and I'll see you in the next episode.